welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of the movie like the script. I'm one of the hosts, Bob Rose, at Thundergrunt Bob on all social media, and right now, one of the other guys is going to introduce themselves. I'm choosing Jimmy.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant. I'm not doing social media these days, but you can find me at scriptbutcher.com.
Jamie?
And I'm Jamie Nash. I'm a screenwriter as well, and I sometimes do script consulting. And you can find me at jamienash.net and click on the screenplay consultant page and see all the crazy stuff I do.
Awesome.
It's not that crazy, actually.
And today this is an interesting episode for the three of us because I think we went through about 4 movies of what we might do for this episode. Not because there's been so much stuff in the news that's like, well, we should do something related to this. We ended up on Clerks because we've been talking about it for 7-8 years. I feel like this is one of those movies that slice of life. We always mention this kind of stuff. So yeah, Kevin Smith's 1994 movie Clerks. Before we get into our discussion topics, we're going to go around the Zoom table and just say our personal relationship with this. I feel like the three of us are going to say pretty similar things. I feel like, but if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go first.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I've spent the last 20 years of my life with people telling me that I dress like Silent Bob, which I do.
And your name is Bob.
Now, my name is Bob. I'm not silent, as the several episodes of this show prove. But actually, I'm dressing like Bill from Bill and Ted 2. It's just his outfit, but it's all black. That's how that started. It's actually not me dressing like Silent Bob, but I've had Silent Bob like stuck to me as a moniker throughout my life for the past, probably pretty much since like the turn of the century. So yeah, that has affected me regardless of this movie. The Silent Bob thing like weighing on me. That's fine. I love Silent Bob, so it's not a problem. Anyway, my personal relationship with this movie is, man, when I think about like the 90s, I can think of 3 names that influenced me to want to be involved with movies, and most of all just to want to pick up a camera. And I think those 3 names arguably are what everyone would say, and one of them has been on this show. I would say it's Robert Rodriguez, Ed Sanchez, and Kevin Smith, right? I mean, the three like revolutionaries of you can make your own movie, right? I can't think of any 3 names that inspire me more. I read, I Kevin Smith's story. I read Robert Rodriguez's book, and you just have to watch Blair Witch and be like, well,
yeah,
if they can do that, you watch Clerks. I remember when I saw Clerks for the first time, I said, I think me and my friends could do this. And the first time I ever like kind of made a movie was in college. I made a 30-minute thesis for my creative writing class with my friends that was a homage to Clerks. So like it literally was one of the most inspiring pieces of quote unquote art that I've ever kind of encountered in that stage of life. I don't know what I don't know what the Clerks of today even would be, because I don't even think that can happen anymore. But for anyone listening that's younger, when you're our age, back in the 90s, when you see a movie like this that's all static shots in very normal locations, it was really inspiring.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how inspiring it was. And of course, Kevin Smith has been such a huge part of my life going forward. But just when it comes to Clerks, it opened, like I say, Jurassic Park made me love movies, and then Clerks made me know that I could probably make them.
Wow.
I mean, I think that I'm not unique. I think that's kind of honestly a hack experience, because I think a lot of people feel the same that are our age. They saw that movie and they're like, okay, I could shoot a movie with my friends where I work. I mean, like I said, I shot my college movie in our house with my friends. It was about 30 minutes long. We got an A.
Hell yeah.
That was the start of me filming things. So there you go. But yeah, I truly do love this movie. It feels like a time and a place. I was a little young when in 1994, I was born in 82, so I was young when this came out, but around, like the late 90s, there's still some crossover with how this movie speaks to me on a personal level. The time period. I remember life without cell phones. I was a video store clerk for 5 years. There's crossover here. So it does speak to me. I would love to know how younger people feel about something like this. We're going to get into that later. But the cell phone aspect, when I was watching this, guys, I kept thinking, like, this movie almost doesn't exist with cell phones, right?
Like
It's
Home Alone.
Yeah, it's like Home Alone, but also this is just a text conversation
Yeah.
with all the drama, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's such a piece, it's such of its time, but man, it still works for me.
Even the way they find out like about her engagement and stuff through the newspaper,
Yeah.
as opposed to
right.
social
the
media or
newspaper
anything.
thing was really wow. Like he
yeah.
had to go somewhere else to get more because there was that high of a demand.
Randall works at a video store.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's that right there, right? Yeah.
My wife even popped in, and she's seen this movie almost as many times as I have, and she was a little confused that they worked at a convenience store without a gas station.
Ah, yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was almost, because that rarely happens these days.
Now,
anymore.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm done, but I wanted to ask you guys: did you ever visit the convenience store?
No.
No.
I actually did. I will say, the last thing I'll say is I went there to New Jersey because I went to the secret stash with friends, but we stopped at the, at the little thing. It is a depressing little area. Like what you see in the movie, it's so like contained.
Yeah.
If you actually go there, it is just like fields of dying grass.
Yeah.
And some sad looking houses.
It looks small, very small, like claustrophobically small. And
it is.
And it looks like a bunker. Like there's no aesthetic value to it at all or anything. It's just like,
and it works for the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just saying, like, actually going to, like when me and my friends in like 2007 did go to our geek mecca of going to meet the Clerks video store, and then you just get out of your car and you're like, Jesus. it's like literally nothing, dude. It's like a bomb shelter above ground,
Is it still a functioning store?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
The video store obviously isn't, but I believe it is, unless Kevin Smith bought it. Remember, I'm talking like mid-aughts that I saw it, so I don't know what's happened since then.
Yeah.
But whoever wants to go next.
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, go.
Twist ending, Bob. I actually don't have an affinity for this movie. I don't dislike it.
Oh shit. Okay.
My introduction to Jay and Silent Bob was the MTV skits. And for listeners who are young, like I knew who they were and what their personalities were and what their shtick was before I ever knew what Clerks was. Because you got to remember, there wasn't the internet. It wasn't as easy to share things as it used to be. I mean, it is now. So for young,
I watched them last night on the DVD.
Oh, they came with them?
Yeah, they're on
Awesome.
my DVD.
So for anyone listening who doesn't know, who's too young, MTV was like huge, and they had little skits in between the videos, Jay and Silent Bob, in the same location, with them sitting, in the outside the store with the same lighting and everything, doing different gags, different skits that almost felt like an extension of the movie, but they worked even if you hadn't seen Clerks and even if you were unaware of, they became famous figures separate from the movie itself. And so that was my introduction. And I actually became a fan of Mallrats and Chasing Amy before I ever saw Clerks. And it was just one of those things. Again, I think I talked about it on the last episode about how IMDb, that wasn't a thing until people weren't regularly using that until the 2000s. So if I wanted to figure out a director's catalog in history, it wasn't that simple. So my first thought wouldn't be let me just oh, I love Mallrats, let me see what else this guy has done. That wasn't it just didn't work that way in the mid 90s. And so, yeah, I didn't see this until I was in college, and my college roommate, it was like his favorite movie. He popped in that VHS, and it was extremely inspirational. But, you know, like, again, I said, I discovered it late, you know.
You already had some context.
Yes. Yeah. So I was like,
saw it without any context. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, oh, these guys who are in Mallrats and, you know, they're in this, they started here. This all makes sense now. So, you know, that was when I was 19 when I first saw it. Now,
it's like you saw the Ernest commercials before seeing the Ernest movies.
Yes. Exactly.
Didn't we all? I mean,
no, I did not.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean,
it was like a decade. Beef?
Yeah, it was a decade of Ernest commercials for me. Before
I saw the Where's the Beef commercials before the movies, for sure. And before the Saturday morning show. So anyway, I haven't seen this movie in like 20 years. So this is probably only like the third time I've ever seen Clerks. And I worked retail for 17 years while making movies. So it's weird. There's this like weird connection because I know that like Kevin Smith was working at this convenience store while shooting a movie about a convenience store. And I was working retail while I was shooting movies on nights and weekends. Like every one of my movies that I've co-written and co-produced, feature films, I did while working at the mall. So now we didn't shoot in the mall, but we didn't film in the mall, but still. So it hit a lot harder as a retail guy. Like, oh my God, the Clopins. So like the movie opens with him, like he just closed and now someone's calling him and asking him to open. Like I have experienced that thing. Right. I have also been on the managerial side and had to call people because the opener is sick. And I have to call someone who just closed and be like, shit, dude, like, can you come in? Like, I know it's 5 a.m., but I need you here at 7. So it just hit really hard in a great way. Like I have lived Dante's life. I've been behind a register with assholes and crazy characters. So yeah. And I was just, the thing that struck me the most, I'm really excited to talk about it, is how much craft there is. You know, it's not just like a guy getting together with his friends and trying to figure out how to make a movie with limited resources. He had the chops right from the start. So that was really exciting to me, that like I wasn't sure how this episode was going to go from a screenwriting instruction, but it's weird that we just did The Rock, the Michael Bay movie, you know, the quintessential Hollywood cheeseburger, and we're going to be talking about some of the same techniques from The Rock used in Clerks. Yeah. So there's something beautiful about that to me, and it just made me happy that I loved it so much this time. So,
I mean, Kevin Smith. A lot of people consider this like an art house movie, I guess, when it came out, but Kevin Smith is a fan of mainstream, you know, and
yeah,
if you know that now watching it, you can see that. Whereas in the 90s, I was like, oh, this is an artsy movie. I thought it was artistic. You know what I mean? It was like, right. In retrospect, I was like, no, this is just a geek making a movie. But he's using the techniques that he fell in love with from Hollywood, you know? Jamie.
Yeah. So I was a year out of college when this came. Kevin Smith and I are, I think, 1 year apart. He's 1 year older than me. So I'm trying to think. I was getting into independent movies at this time. Like I was a regular at the Charles in Baltimore. I'd see whatever the hot indie movie was. But honestly, most of those were more like Slacker and I don't know.
The inspiration for this.
Spanking the Monkey, My Own Private Idaho, Reservoir Dogs and El Mariachi had come out. So I had seen those, you know. But I was getting into this independent thing. And that's the thing you just said. Like when I saw Clerks, the revelation was, this is like an everyman movie. This is not some artsy fartsy thing I can't show to people that hate, like, you know, boring, ponderous, you know, whatever,
right.
You know, this is a
Navel
movie
gazing.
this is a movie that's made for an audience and a crowd. And when I saw it, and it's one of the, I always say Aliens was one of the biggest, probably the greatest theatrical memories I have is watching Aliens when I was a kid. This one is up there. And I'll give you some context. So Atomic Books had just opened, and they sponsored a preview of this movie I had never heard of, Clerks. But I go see 4 movies a week in the theater, and when I can't even remember how I got the tickets to go see it. I think they might have come through my sister, like a strange source that doesn't even see movies. And I trekked out to see this movie because I was the type of person that was like, I like to see them before the curve. I knew all about the Blair Witch before it came out. I was that guy. And so, but Clerks, honestly, I didn't know too much about it. It's in a Sundance or something I might have heard or something, but I don't know. And I went and saw it, and it was a packed audience at the Towson Commons. Again, sponsored by Atomic Books.
Jeez, Jamie,
Towson Commons, baby.
Towson Commons.
Crap.
And it was kind of a small theater. It was a little sweaty, it was a little, and the movie killed in that theater. It killed. There were people falling over in the aisles laughing. And it was kind of a revelation to me to see an independent movie like play like that, like play like a fan, not a fan film, but you know what I mean? Just play the audience. It killed so hard. And when I was watching it, like the jokes were just almost something like pulled out of the perfect version of my brain. Like because my sense of humor was it can be a dark and it can be a little filthy, and it also can be a little bit mixed with Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark jokes. This movie was just like, holy shit. It was like, I just couldn't believe how close it aligned with my own sensibility at the time. And to your point, like, how did it inspire me writing wise? This is before I really started writing. I was computer programming at this time, 1 year out of college, but still interested in kind of dabbling and thinking one day I'll make a movie or something. My first screenplay was probably written a couple years after this. And it was essentially Clerks at a Renaissance festival is what it was. and that was my first script. And it was very, it had a lot in common with the style and the jokes and probably the mini plot stuff we'll talk about. Mine might have had a little bit more action adventure since it was at the Renaissance Festival, but it really did influence me in that way. And I've been a fan of Kevin Smith, the guy, ever since. Like Bob and I were talking, we saw the Road Show with what movie was that?
It was Jay and Silent Bob's Strike Back.
That's right. That's the one it was. I have action figures of Clerks action figures around my house.
I almost put that on the talking points, but I didn't.
I have them. I have all of them. I have the whole set. I watched. I think I own the DVD of the cartoon at one point.
Jamie, do you remember when that like aired? That was huge for me and my friends. Like we like made an event of that.
Absolutely.
That was such a big deal.
Absolutely. So I've been a fan of him in general. Smodcast, like I listened to that for years. I eventually gave it up. I don't know. Eventually I went on to other things, but for many, many years, like honestly, it was probably one of the first podcasts I listened to. If not the first, maybe it was kind of like Marin and Smodcast kind of blend in my head as being very early podcasts I listened to. So anyway, very big movie. Still to me, I marvel when I rewatched it, just marveled at all the jokes, all the gags, all the stuff stuffed into this movie, and all different kinds of gags, like even little like asides, like Kevin Smith is especially, we joke that he just kind of sticks the camera on a tripod, never moves it or anything. But even little editing jokes, like when he said, nobody goes to the convenience store at this time. And then there's the people banging on the windows like zombies, just little gags like that. And it's just stuffed full of them. Like it's almost relentlessly stuffed with good ideas. And so I'm still very impressed by the movie, even though I understand that maybe kids of a certain younger age may not understand some points of it. I think they'll understand a lot of it just because it's so stuffed. There's got to be something for them at some point. So anyway, that's my Clerks story.
Did I ever tell, or did I ever mention on this podcast or tell you guys I used to write for Kevin Smith's website?
I think you've told us, but I don't know if you
View Askew.
podcast.
No, it was moviepoopshoot.com.
Oh.
Remember the website that was in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back? That existed for a while.
Okay.
And I became a movie reviewer on that site. He eventually left it behind and made the Smodcast Empire.
Gotcha.
And that site is now called a site called Fred.com. I don't know. It's still up. And my stuff's still on it.
Wow.
But I wrote for moviepoopshoot.com. But my point, Jamie, was like I was such a fan. I didn't want to gush too much, but like that was like I like did everything I could to just write for that website. I was
close enough.
Yeah, like I just wanted to be in like the aura of Kevin Smith, because he was. It almost felt like, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but it felt like he was one of us that got through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like he never felt like he was Hollywood. He just felt like he was one of us who spoke like us, likes the things that we do.
Still feels like that.
It still, let's be honest. Yeah, it still fucking feels like that.
When I saw, what was the movie again we saw at the roadshow? The Jay and Silent Bob
Strike Back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw it with some friends, and honestly, I probably liked the movie better than they did. Like I had laughs, and they were like, and in retrospect, they were probably more right than I. You know, at this point, his movies are kind of, they're almost like the movies, you know, our friends make for no money or something like that with slightly bigger budgets. They still have good jokes and stuff, but he came out there and did his shtick and talked, and he really, like, what I left was that he was just this dude that I don't know. I don't think it's fake. Like, I think he really is that cool of a guy. Like, it's not a shtick. It's not, he like just loved to be there showing the movie.
Well, that's why his movies work, because you can feel,
I think so,
authenticity.
Even if they're not good, they're authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
like, you know,
that alone was just something. Honestly, I can't say I've sat in an audience and felt that. Like when I go to a concert, I'm not necessarily like, man, Pearl Jam really like to be there or something like that. And in some ways I'm like, yeah, you know, let's get our money and get to the next gig. But I was like, man, this guy is doing this because he wants to do it. He wants to be here. He wants to hang out, you know?
Me and you saw that roadshow, Jamie, but that was like the third roadshow I saw with him. And that doesn't even count the 4 or 5 times I saw Evenings with Kevin Smith.
Okay.
Like me and my friends would travel to DC, Virginia, all this stuff. And I can tell you there was nights where he would go on for close to 6 hours.
Yeah.
Like the movie, like there was no movie. And remember, those didn't have movie screenings. It was him talking for 6 or 7 hours. And I remember, this is when I was younger now. I was way younger. My back was a lot different. But I remember it got to the end and we were all disappointed. That's how entertaining that shit. Because he would bring out Jay. They would tell stories. They talk about their adventures in Hollywood. You know, he was funny, engaging, all this stuff. That's when he discovered his whole second side of his career, which was that.
Yeah.
But you know, Clerks was the start, but Kevin Smith, the man, there's something to the guy.
Yeah.
And you know, I understand people don't like his movies and stuff, but he's the real deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, I almost think that Kevin Smith, the man, has sort of, in some ways, outshined the movies.
It's eclipsed.
Yeah.
It's eclipsed everything, maybe except Clerks, as far as like what it meant culturally. you know,
right?
You know, and I did like his last movie. I liked 4:30 movie. So there you go.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I thought it was genuine. It's
I
not,
will. I'll
great
see it
or anything, but
yeah.
Let's not sit here and talk about Kevin Smith. We're here to talk about Clerks. He obviously means a lot to us, sort of to Jimmy. I'm just kidding. You hate him because you saw those MTV commercials.
No, I love those commercials.
I know. Those are great. I watched them last night. They're really good. I don't think this is the question I always ask, but who wrote this shit?
We don't need.
Yeah, we just spent 10 minutes, 20 minutes talking about him.
There's documentaries about shooting this movie. There's thousands of hours of Kevin Smith documenting how
right.
this movie was shot. You don't need us to go over any of it.
Yes, yeah, and
Or how this movie was.
it was a
written.
very
Yeah.
common story in the 90s. Max out your
Yeah.
credit cards, make a movie with, do what you can. The one thing that is interesting that, today people might not understand as much. Most of that money back then would go to film stock and things like that. The other thing that I was processing, because I always think of Kevin Smith as kind of low skills in some ways. I mean, I know
He thinks of himself like that.
Yeah.
So,
but the fact that he edited this movie, now maybe he was just the guy sitting next to the guy editing the movie, but he would have had to edit this in the old fashioned, cut and, So, and I was just like, that's what I was thinking about tonight.
I mean, if you could, like I said, you could shoot this on a cell phone pretty competently now.
Right.
A cell phone, a tripod, and some minimal sound equipment, and edit it on a cheap PC.
Yeah. Witness his current movies, which are almost look like that.
Right.
I know he doesn't shoot in a cell phone, but it's,
I mean, this has the production value that you could argue that if you didn't know all the stuff about film and processing and editing like that, there's YouTube videos now that look like they have more production value than Clerks.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
No, it's weird that the black and white actually give it this weird artsy kind of feel, So
and the 16 millimeter grain.
Oh, especially now,
that grain.
So he put this movie, the budget, and I've heard him say this budget, $27,000 on credit cards.
Yeah.
He sold his comic book collection, put it, money on credit, and the domestic gross that's listed on Box Office Mojo has no international gross. Is $3,151,000. So that's a huge profit already. That's a huge X profit. But this movie, I have to think, made its money off the universe it launched, the media sales, the action figures, all the other stuff.
I mean, they got hired by MTV almost immediately.
Yeah.
To make the things that Jimmy saw. That's their first payday, right?
Yep. So
there's an intro on the DVD where they talk about the fact that they got paid for those and everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta do.
Yeah.
I had the DVD. I wasn't gonna call out this person because I think they listen, but one of our listeners is a friend, and he has my DVD. He also has my Mallrats.
Oh,
He's
no.
had them for like decades.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
So
get the Blu-rays anyway. What are you doing with
I know,
your
but what
SD?
I'm saying, when we chose this one, I was like, oh, I'll just go to my DVD. But I was like, oh, that person still has it.
I think it's funny. Before we get to the next talking point, we were gonna do Dogma, and we all realized that it wasn't streaming, so Jamie couldn't watch it.
Yeah. So
we switched to Clerks.
I thought it was Dog Man we were doing. I didn't realize Dog Man. No. Yeah. And I really wanted to watch Dog Man. I haven't seen that in a while. I've seen it a couple times, but
I have the out of print Blu-ray
Same.
for that one. Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed. And even though I was happy to watch Clerks, I've seen Clerks a bazillion times, but I've only seen Dogma like 3 or 4 times. So I kind of
going forward, I'm still happy to do Mallrats and Dogma. I feel like those two have merit.
We can do
eventually.
them. Hell yeah.
Not right away. I just mean like eventually.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, we're gonna record. We're doing a whole week of Kevin Smith's movies every day.
My choice is the Bruce Willis cop one. That's the one.
The Cop Out. Yeah.
Cop Out.
Yeah, the Cop Out.
Okay.
I was trying to get through this without mentioning Cop Out. Oh man, that's funny. Okay, well, I feel like what you were talking about, Jamie, is a perfect write what you have intro, right? Writing for the micro budget. This movie's kind of the prime 90s example of that.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, I put this on here because I've been, you always hear people who are. We usually talk about screenwriting, but this episode, it's worth talking to the people out here who listen, who
it's a little about filmmaking
stuff, who want to make their own stuff, who are thinking about it, who might not have made something yet, but you're thinking about it, right? And you hear everybody say, write what you know, and yeah, sometimes, and in this case, he definitely wrote what he knew, but I like to preach write what you have, and that is how. Personally, myself, I have been able to, along with my partner, make all 7 movies because we always wrote around resources that we had at our disposal that we could make a movie for, way less than it would cost because we had these resources at our disposal. And he had this convenience store that he could just pick and choose when he would film in there, and that's like invaluable, right? So he found that superpower of I've also heard people say, like, what's your producing superpower? And that's what this is, right? Like, he's got this convenience store. What can he do with it? That's the way to figure out how you can make a feature-length film for low to no money, is what do you have at your disposal that you can make it happen. So that's all the reason.
Also, it's also like, with this idea, his whiteboard of ideas for how to get around problems.
Yep.
Obviously the blinds being closed in the front is so that they could shoot at night.
Yep.
It wasn't like that was probably I don't know if I think he said it was added because how do you shoot? You have to add that to the script, right? So there's lines in the movie. There's a repeated line in the movie of there's nothing but savages in this town because of the gum in the locks, so that they didn't have to shoot. They could shoot it late at night and think it'd be day and everything.
That's awesome.
There's stuff like even like the logic of some stuff, like putting the shoplifting thing on the cashier so they could shoot scenes where they didn't have to constantly be standing there. Like the logic of, does every scene have to have Dante standing behind the counter?
Yeah.
How do we get around that with this setting?
And they have this familiarity with every little nook and cranny in the space.
Any of the store.
And then, if we're just talking from putting my producer hat on, you can store all the gear there. So there's no quote unquote company move. All the stuff is there. So half the work of getting the gear there is done. And you just like put it back and, set it up the next morning or set it up the next evening. That's like half the battle. 0 transportation.
Also, I mean, just the simple fact of the Quick Stop and RST Video, that's the actual names of the store, because they couldn't afford. They just like, what's the names of the store in this world? What they already are.
Yeah.
You can't afford. It's stuff like that. You just have to go. You just have to accept, what you're given, and it's better to have the movie and make those little concessions for what you have to do. Like if Kevin Smith's like, no, the blinds have to be open, he adds another $60,000 to his movie. You know what I mean? Because he has to find a way to shoot during the day. Yeah.
Jamie, this made me think of last night at Terrace Lanes. It's a great example, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good example of when I got the call for that place. They basically had a bowling alley and a treatment, and they were like, the bowling alley is going to close down in 2 months. And it was like, could you write a script and shoot a movie in 2 months? Which almost seems like a movie plot unto itself, right?
Yeah. Right.
And unlike this, which he actually worked at, I didn't know the bowling alley, but it, a similar thing is I had to walk the bowling alley. I tried to use every nook and cranny of it. And Adam, who wrote the Clown in the Cornfield author, Adam Cesar.
Hell yeah.
He wrote the script, but we were working together to figure out what we could do. Basically, it was like like whiteboard, based on what we had, and we tried to use every last bit of it. But similar to what you say, the advantage of it was we could leave all the equipment there. It became our office as well as our, all those things. And we had the full run of the place because it was closed. So it wasn't like we had to share it with the actual business. But yeah, and it's the only way, that movie was made for a little bit more than this movie. But, part of the reason it could be made even that cheap was because of that dedicated set, so to speak.
And you had it at your disposal.
Had it at our disposal.
Yeah, so that I just think it's, if you're out there and you're thinking about making something, that's right what you have.
Filmmaking is about compromises and finding things that make those compromises possible.
I always and it's funny how as years go on, like this kind of story is probably forgotten, but somebody Bob mentioned early here, Robert Rodriguez and El Mariachi. Who knows? We may do El Mariachi one day.
I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like 5 of his movies I'd love to do. So,
and El Mariachi was made. I'll just tell the El Mariachi story here because I think it's relevant. Is he basically wrote down all the things he had, and he tells a story in Rebel Without a Crew, his book.
Great book to read.
Great book.
Recommend it.
Great book to read. So he wrote down everything he had, and he had a turtle, a guitar case. He had a town that he kind of knew he could have the run of. There was a school bus in the town. And he just wrote that stuff down. And then what he did was he checked them into some medical experiment that gave him like $5,000. And he was there for 2 weeks, and that's where he wrote the script, or maybe a month. I don't really remember the timeline. So he wrote the script there based on the things he had. So he basically wrote a list of the things he had and then included every one of those things. The turtles walking across the road. The guitar case becomes kind of I don't know if it's the MacGuffin really, but it's the reason why they think the guy is a killer. All these and the movie became El Mariachi. And I think that's, if absence of some great idea or something like that, I think making a list of the things you have and brainstorming that way is a great way to start. And I became a screenwriter essentially trying to make Clerks or trying to make El Mariachi. And I never did it. Well, I did do it eventually, but that's what I learned doing it. Even writing those scripts was I like screenwriting. That's what I learned. So I was trying to write El Mariachi, and instead I learned that I love screenwriting. What I found was I wasn't very good at doing that. I tended to always do something that I probably shouldn't do, and I tend to like movies that do that tend to do the things they shouldn't do, like Evil Dead as an example, or something like that. But anyway, I do think it's a great technique. I think it's a great technique for short films as well.
I moved last year, but I had a whole section of my old closet that was just filled with weird shit my friends were either going to throw out or just give me. And the reason they did that was because I often back in the day would I made all my shorts based on like some dumb idea or thing that I had. So like, they're like, hey, would you want this broken vacuum cleaner? And I was like, yeah, I would say yes. And I'd throw it in this giant pile because I'd be like, I could probably make a 10-minute short about somebody, doing something weird with a vacuum cleaner. You know what I mean? And then I have that. And they can destroy it on film, on camera.
It
doesn't matter, right? That's how I used to think.
I think I was a borderline hoarder for that very reason.
Right. Yeah.
Because I would keep like old
out of hand.
Yeah, I keep weird like pipe parts or something, because I'd be like, that could be a spaceship part or something later on down the road. Or I had all these weird hats, because you never know when I might need a cowboy hat for the movie.
I mean, you guys are describing my garage right now.
Right. I mean, any very low budget filmmaker has like bags of shit they're not going to ever use in their normal life, but they might need
these old rusty keys. They're going to be perfect someday. I'm just waiting for the moment when we can put it in something. I mean, one of the Kickstarter promotion videos for Cauldron of Cthulhu was born out of, I had found at my mother-in-law's house this old 100-year-old ledger that was like a giant oversized book, and she was like, I don't want that, do you want it? I was like, yeah. And then like it sat around in my garage for like 5 years, and then when it came time to do like, how can we like make something cool, I was like, we'll pretend this is the Necronomicon. And the entire promotional video was born out of this book that had been sitting in my garage collecting dust for 5 years.
I had to buy a new microwave, and then I had the idea for Timecrowave.
That's amazing.
And I was like, I know, and I was like, how much do microwaves cost? And then I went to Goodwill and bought a microwave for $4, and I made that. You know what I mean? Like that was just like, what can I get? What's cheap?
Yeah.
And then you go to like take it to 11 with the ideas.
It's just a great spark.
Hey Jimmy, one thing I'm looking at our outline behind the scenes. I almost think we should do the mini plot stuff first, and
Yeah,
then you should
yeah,
Yeah,
talk
let's
let's
about
do
the next
that.
part.
Let's do that.
let's
So
do the
let's
mini plot stuff.
Just because I think then we'll have the context of like
Yeah.
strategies or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me give my little spiel on mini plots, which you may have heard before. It's almost as popular as my spiel on genres, Save the Cat genres, but not quite as
Winding
popular.
Jamie up.
That's
It's
right.
still bingo
If
card
Jamie
stuff.
had an action figure like the Clerks, this would be one of the things.
That's right.
that pull
That's
string.
right.
Mini plot, arch
Mini
plot.
plot.
Yeah. Yes. So this comes from Robert McGee's story, and it's one of my favorite things to reference in Robert McGee's story. I usually do it at the beginning of my college classes, and you'll see why in a second. So the idea is that there's 3 types of stories. There's and he actually visualizes it as a pyramid because there's kind of a spectrum within this pyramid of where your story might fall. So at the top of the pyramid, and honestly, the way I teach storytelling and the way most of the movies you consume that are studio, we call them cheeseburger movies. They're called classical design or arch plot. And classical design or arch plot, they have cause effect. So one scene causes the next, as opposed to going to like an episodic structure, a random structure. They usually have closed endings. Usually the things that are set up are paid off. There's usually some kind of big catharsis in the end. They usually take place during linear time. It's easy to track in that way. They have external conflicts, so it's more like Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin, as opposed to Spider-Man versus his doubt or something like that. They tend to have single protagonists that you can kind of lean on, even if there are multiple people, almost like in a rom-com. One person tends to be pushed to the front, and the realities tend to be consistent. I wouldn't say realistic, but you can understand it. You can kind of figure out the rules of reality. They don't get weird. So that's classic design or arch plot. And most of the movies we watch are that. So anything Marvel movies, Pixar movies, most of them are going to fall into this camp. Minimalism or mini plot is the more Sundancey movies like this. And they often have open endings. They don't necessarily, by the way, what they really tend to do is they take the classical design, but they don't land 100% like the cause effect. They don't land the closed endings. They could, but they don't feel like it's important to like be that artificial. They don't feel, they're not constructed like a math problem. Instead, they're a little loose. So they tend to have open endings. Sometimes they have internal conflicts. That's the big one, I think, that you often find in the mini plots. In this one in particular, I'm already spoiling that we think this one is a mini plot movie. Sometimes they have multiple protagonists, not this one, but if you think of something like Nebraska or something like that, or Magnolia even.
Nebraska is also black and white.
Uh-huh. I was trying to go for like an art house, one of those.
Yeah, I love Nebraska. Yeah, it's a great movie.
And they often have passive protagonists. Again, something we see a little bit in this movie. And then there's a third one, which we hardly ever talk about, which is anti-structure, anti-plot. And that has coincidence all over the place. Time doesn't necessarily matter sometimes.
It's vibes only.
It's vibes, and inconsistent realities. And like I said, this is kind of a spectrum where some of the movies at the very tippy top will be like I said, a Pixar movie like The Incredibles or something might be at the top of this list. They're classic stories. They're Aristotelian tradition stories that, and then, like I said, the Sundance and the Oscar movies, like Anora or something like that, might fall. A Real Pain we did might fall in mini plot, and then anti-structure. Probably the closest thing, but we actually, I think when we talked about it, we realized it had a lot of classic design and other things too, would be like David Lynch. And we did Mulholland Drive. And so we talked a little bit about that, but Mulholland Drive is a good example of one that actually has some of the other stuff too. So anyway, that's the 3 categories, and we're saying Clerks falls in the mini plot category.
Yeah, and the this movie does some of the things that Mulholland Drive did, which is and I'm starting to wonder if that's like a key to the recipe of getting a mini plot right, which is I didn't note them all, but it has like a opening and closing. It has some of those pillar beats, Jamie, in between.
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly the one thing I noted about it. And Jimmy and I both have some things to say about mini plot, but the one thing I noted, because generally your question with mini plot is, and I'll get to 2 sides of mini plot, is what gives it momentum? What makes it not boring? What makes it not drag? That's kind of the question as a writer you're challenged with. And quite honestly, a lot of people that write mini plot almost write it by accident, and their stories drag. It's not well constructed. A lot of the times, when I say that, like amateur writers, they're actually trying to write a classical plot, an arch plot, but they screw a few things up, and then they start going, well, what about Clerks?
Would those people normally be making comedies too, Jamie, or would they be making more dramatic mini plot type stuff?
All kinds. It depends. It depends. But
okay. I mean, the comedy matters because it makes the jokes make it less boring too.
Yeah. Sometimes that is what'll happen. But what I realized was, arch plot in particular, or I'm sorry, the mini plot in particular. Like if you look at the Save the Cat beats, there's this thing called the pillar beats. And the pillar beats are the single scene beats of the Save the Cat beat sheet. So a Save the Cat beat sheet has 15 beats. And then there are certain ones that are single scenes, opening image, closing image. This has that. I actually think it has kind of a catalyst, depending on what you look at.
Yeah,
the call.
It does.
The call, exactly. So when they find out, or even you could say when he finds out Caitlin is getting engaged, it kind of stirs, you know what I mean? It mixes them up, throws them in doubt. There's a midpoint, like when she comes back. There's an all is lost when she sleeps with the guy in the back, we'll say.
Yeah.
And those things are actually there. And it's one trick to keep momentum up. And Jimmy's going to point out a couple other tricks, especially the one I skipped over. But it's one trick to keep things going, is even though the goals are internal, and the conflicts tend to be internal, you can still do kind of a Save the Cat thing from a high level.
Yeah, you just map out those 6 bigger beats, and then you can just kind of do whatever you want in between, which is what we found that Mulholland Drive did. It was surprising to see. We were like, for all its weirdness, there's like 6 pillar beats here.
Interestingly enough, that's kind of how I teach television seasons, like to map out your television seasons, map out the big beats, and then don't worry, you can be a little episodic and random in those middle beats, like the fun and games and the bad guys close in.
That's a great parallel.
Yep.
Love that. Yeah, because sometimes when you're watching a show and it mixes it up, it feels good. You're like, oh, it keeps you on your toes.
I feel like with Mulholland Drive too, putting it under a microscope shows that, like, people assume it's wacky and doesn't make any sense, but we put it under a microscope. We're like, oh no, it makes actual way more sense now by looking into it.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that I wanted to talk about on mini plot is about Dante and his arc. Do you guys think he arcs? Do you guys think he changes?
It's there's a part of me that, because the whole lasagna thing, right? He finally decides he wants the lasagna giving girl, as opposed to the old thing. So he does kind of make a commitment, sort of.
I still stand by that. If the backroom dead guy didn't happen, Dante would have made the wrong decision.
And I feel like he
Even if
still
even if
goes
Bob
back
said what he said,
to- There's a whiff of change, Jamie.
there's
Yeah.
a whiff.
Yeah.
But
But I tend to agree. Like, he kind of ends up in the same place. Like, does he commit to college? Like, because that seems like one
Yes,
of the
No.
things, right? No,
no.
he doesn't.
it's hard to divorce myself because I know
What happens next?
he
Yeah.
doesn't change. Actually,
Yeah.
You know what's funny too when I think about it. One of the telltale signs of an amateur script that is a mini plot and may not work, right, is the log line, and it's the word choose or choice, or to choose between spending the rest of his life in a cheap convenience store, or grabbing life, and except stuff like that. Whenever you see that in a log line, you're like, ugh, mini plot, we're in trouble.
yeah.
And this
And
movie kind of that is the
That's it.
basis of this movie.
Yeah.
It's deciding, and the part of the reason it's a problem is, as a plot, deciding isn't very exciting as far as drama goes. It's just like, but instead what we have is a series of episodic incidents contained within the decision, that may or may not inform the decision that he ultimately chooses one girl over the other. But does he, he still chooses to be at the convenience store. So
But you could also look at it like he's outside of choosing the girl and everything, he's always choosing the easiest, the answer that's the least path to the least resistance.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the
Yes.
fact that she did that in the bathroom makes him go, well, now that's all I have, so I will go with that. Which is the exact problem of what everyone's telling him through the whole movie is, you don't want to fucking move, you don't want to get a new job, you don't want to go, he just wants the easiest, laziest path. So I feel like that's proving he doesn't
I think
change.
he pretty much continues that path when the movie's over.
Right, yeah. He's basically just taking his only option that as he sees it.
And
Like, should Dante stay with Veronica? I don't know. The way he was acting the whole movie, probably not.
No.
But he's going to, because he just sticks himself in that hell.
Yeah.
And so I don't think he changes, is my argument there, I guess.
Well, so the reason I brought it up is because we just did a Real Pain, and it reminded me so much in the handling of the we talk a lot in the show about the before and after snapshot, and that's how you really can gauge whether the character has grown and changed. And I feel like this before and after is exactly the same. Like, it opens and they use that, that very clear bookend of him putting up the sign that says, I assure you we're open. And then Randall throws down the torn sign at him and says, you're closed. And that scene ends with them like basically saying they'll see each other tomorrow at the store. Like, nothing is changed.
You could say, though, that Dante accomplished his goal, was to leave.
That's really
the goal, is just to leave.
Ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that we didn't say, Jamie, that I love that you say about arch plot versus mini plot is that arch plot is the way that we wish the world was, and mini plot is the way the world is. And like, this movie, like, the day ends, nothing profound has changed, no growth has happened. It's just another day in the life at the quick stop, and it feels like the way the world is. So
yeah,
support the mini plot.
And presumably yesterday was the same, and tomorrow will be.
Yes.
It's a good point. A lot of times, mini plot, the best justification is if you're trying to portray real life. Like, that's so a lot of times biopics, they just have to be mini plot. People that are doing memoirs or things like that, they almost by definition have to be mini plot. And then I have found over the years some horror movies that I've written, when they steer too much into the arch plot category, they become less scary because they feel too artificial, and therefore they feel safe. I'm not saying that's true of all. There's different types of movies for,
Are you saying because the audience can follow what you're doing, whereas mini plot would throw them off a bit?
Mini plot just feels like, if you can this isn't true of all horror movies. Like there are some horror movies that are fun because they're artificial. You know what I mean? You want
Yeah,
them
sure.
to be artificial, but they're the kind that are try to get under your skin sometimes. The kind that are real deep, like a movie I worked on, Lovely Molly, for example. Right? It's very much it's trying to feel real almost to make it feel a little dirty and scary and problematic or something. And if you veer too much into the arch plot, the kind of catalyst, break into two, midpoint, and you veer too much into it, it doesn't feel real. It betrays the reality you're trying to dig into to a certain extent.
The film familiarity with the feelings of, oh, we're shifting into this portion of the movie. Yes.
Yeah, right. And so sometimes, mini plot is almost the choice to go for that bare bones realism, even when you start to sneak in like the classic arch plot kind of design and stylized elements. Even when you start to sneak in the setup and payoff and stuff, there's a little bit of internal conflict, or there's a little bit of passive, a lot of passivity in horror movies. A lot of times the hero isn't necessarily taking it to the villain. They're just trying to
come on.
Yeah.
And you have superior position. Yeah.
They're trying to fly under the radar. So, but anyway, it's just, I think it's a really valid point that's almost the best answer. Like if your answer is, I want this to feel very realistic and feel like life. It's like Nomad Land or something, which is like the most mini plot movie I can think of off the top of my head. That movie would be really weird if you started to do the catalyst break into plot and stuff, or midpoints and all the setups and payoffs and stuff like that. It would just, you'd start to be like, this is odd. This doesn't feel like reality,
I was also going to say, to go back to Dante for just 1 second, we didn't mention it, but you got to remember, this is a movie written where Dante is supposed to die. He gets the real ending, the original ending of Clerks is he gets shot to death.
Wow.
At the end,
right?
Which they, obviously changed, but that's how it was written.
Wow.
Yes.
Was Dante, he gets his name from Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
Is a man who's in hell, and it ends with his own death. So I just wanted to bring that up. Like, does he change? I don't think Kevin Smith sees it as him changing.
Yeah.
If he wrote it as him getting shot to death at the end. So.
No, and it reminded me again of the A Real Pain, what Jesse Eisenberg said about his intent for A Real Pain was that the arc was for the audience to to fall in love with a bunch of characters who may not be initially your favorite when the movie starts, but you will understand their pain and you'll understand their life experience, and by the end you will have a different perspective on who these people are and why they are so angry and upset and cynical. And so I feel like that tracks for this. Like 100% feel that way when I leave the movie. Like, oh, poor Dante's got to go back there in the morning.
And you also, as the audience, you arc a little of yourself because it makes you want to not be stuck.
Yes.
In life, it actually, it makes you something.
As James said, the audience learns the lesson, the character doesn't.
The character doesn't. Right?
Yeah, and to put it in context, so that era of, in the early 90s, we were coming into like, it was off of the Reagan era, 80s, and then in the Bush era, and there was a downturn in jobs when I was coming out of college. It really happened like the year before I came into college, where college students that were highly educated, I know these weren't college students, and were really smart, like Dante or Randall or whatever, that had a lot of talents, for lack of a better term, who you could put into a job and they'd excel, couldn't get jobs. And that's kind of where the slacker generation comes from. It's like, we have all these, very smart, talented people that are instead working as clerks because they really can't get jobs.
I mean, you also have to point to Jay and Silent Bob themselves.
Yep.
Which is odd because in the way this movie portrays them, they're kind of happy and they know themselves. Like, it's unlike Dante.
I almost put the ensemble assemble on the list because I feel like it's there. You're basically saying that,
that they've accepted
extreme
themselves.
Reflection,
What's funny about it is I think kids today at around that age probably can feel that themselves in their own. There's some similarities. Whereas coming off of the 80s, it was very foreign to see that. It was like, you got a job, you went into the thing, you run a job for 40 years, you retired. There was a path,
to prosperity. Yes.
Right. And I know that's an issue in our world, in our country today, which kind of mirrors what it was like in the 90s, because that was new. It was like, oh, really? You can do all this stuff and there's no kind of path of prosperity in front of us. There's no path to take. So instead, you just work at a convenience store and ponder like what life should have been. And I think Kevin Smith was a guy that was kind of doing that himself.
I think he's still doing it. I think I think the sequels to Clerks literally ask those same questions, Jamie.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of an idea that resonates still to this day.
Yeah.
So you want to you want to change to, since we put it out, we're change the order. Do you want to do the prison clock?
We have a written outline that's then we stick to it, but sometimes we switch it up.
I think your idea of a ticking clock is another great mini plot momentum trick. So I think that'd be a great time to talk about.
So this is the thing that stuck out to me the most from a screenwriting perspective, that I was like, this is so cool. We never see stuff like this. It basically it's a subversive ticking clock. There is a very clear ticking clock mechanism, and I'm calling it the prison clock because I was like, oh shit, he's in a prison. Like, he's a prisoner, and we're just rooting for him to get out of prison. So I'm calling it the prison clock.
Or he's in hell.
He's in hell, the hell that is Quick Stop. It's basically a deadline to the character's freedom. And that goes, usually in movies, we are rooting for the character to beat the clock. We are rooting, time is running out, and that's what creates the tension. And we're rooting for characters to achieve their goals before time runs out. And anytime there's a chance for the clock to slow down and like that, to halt that deadline from happening, we feel good, and it creates more excitement and momentum. But in Clerks, the character and we can't wait for that deadline to happen. We're like, get here sooner. And the every time someone calls him or something happens where the clock turns out to be longer, we feel like, oh shit, the deadline is further away. This sucks. So like, and it has a great midpoint, Jamie, where the clock is reset, which is what a classic arch plot Hollywood cheeseburger does. The clock is reset. But in this case, the deadline is further away. Usually in a Hollywood movie, the deadline gets closer. Like, you have to get to the Death Star quicker than you thought you would have to get to, or else the Empire wins.
Right.
In this case, they're like, you're not going to be able to leave this place for another 12 hours, dude. And by the way, you got to come back tomorrow and the next day. So like, his path to his deadline to freedom just gets further and further away. So it's very unconventional. Usually we're rooting for we're scared of time running out. And for the entire movie, the urgency is for that time to we want that time to run out. Please, the sands of the hourglass, please make them fall faster. So it was just very subversive, but it's also playing with what we know about how time and ticking clock in movies works, to do this. Like, he's absolutely aware of what this is, So I just thought it was really cool and interesting. I wonder if we'll see it again. Like, now that we've identified it, if we'll see it in other stories.
Laying out the prison clock really makes it seem like the death at the end would have been a happy ending.
Yeah, it would have been
like, it's a relief
and a release. Yeah.
Dante has no more worries.
I didn't know that was the original ending.
Wow. You can watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, they shot it.
Yeah. I think Miramax, they made them change it, right, Jamie? If I remember straight.
I don't remember. I don't remember
Okay.
if that's if Harvey did it.
Well, yeah.
Speaking of Harvey, though, I just super quick. Did you hear that? Did you see the recent thing about Kevin talking about a Dogma sequel, and he got a call from Harvey about it? This is, yeah, it was pretty interesting. It was like he got a call, and it was Harvey on the phone. He was like, "Hey, that cast is great. I want to make a sequel," and he was all excited. And then like 2 days later, all the charges came out. And he called up Miramax to figure out what was going on. And he said, oh, he was just trying to see if you were like the rat. Because he said because you answered the phone, he knew you weren't the rat.
He was not actually promising a Dogma sequel.
Yeah, right.
And now Kevin Smith says he's going to make a Dogma sequel. So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So now we're at Low Budget Trick.
Yes.
The off-screen movie.
Yeah, I find this in a lot of movies, this kind of, I'm not sure if it's a trick. And we've talked about the off-screen movie before. I'll give it a little color here. Off-screen movie is an idea that is on the wordplay site Terry Rossio, Ted Elliott. It's really Terry Rossio. I'm not sure Ted Elliott. I always say Ted Elliott, but I'm not sure that
it's because they're one and the same from a screenwriting team,
Yeah, until they broke apart like 15 years ago now.
Oh, shit.
They've been separate like for 15 years. I don't know
why. Lasts forever.
Yeah, I think Ted retired. Or maybe, but then he popped back in like with the Pirates thing, believe it or not. Anyway, so Terry Rossio's website, very, an article that I read toward the early days of my screenwriting career about off-screen movie. And the idea is good movies have a off-screen movie that we don't see, something happening in the scenes that are kind of cut in some ways, not actually cut, but we cut around, that is interesting. And the better movies, his theory was the better movies have good off-screen movies. Like if you listed all the things you don't see, it would actually be kind of interesting. It would be an interesting, I'm not sure that it would add up to a movie into itself, but there's good stuff happening off screen. This movie has a couple off screen parts, and the one that I wanted to point to is the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Funeral, and it's almost like a trick you see. I mean, Reservoir Dogs was almost like an off screen movie. That was the concept.
Yes,
right, yeah.
But there are a lot of low budget movies that do this, and it's kind of like, it kind of leans into my thing that Jimmy and I always talk about is like conceptually, like big movie, small window. In some
big
ways.
World, small window. I was going to say it. Yep.
Yeah. It's almost like another version of this where you can have a big movie, but you can cut the big parts and show the reaction parts. And in a low budget world, sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it's a really interesting because you have all the heightened emotion, and we can imagine like some insane scene that happens, that we never see
at the funeral home. You mean
at the funeral home? Yep. And we they leave it to us to imagine it, and in some ways, the movie and the world of the movie gets bigger and bigger by using this kind of trick or technique, so to speak.
Two things about this that I know is that the reason this is off screen is because they couldn't afford to shoot it.
Right.
Like the Jaws shark.
Right. It's a Jaws shark thing. And two, you can watch it now. It's on the DVD in the animated Clerks style.
Oh, okay.
So they animated this scene, which you could actually put into the movie. It would look completely different, but it does exist now because it was written. It was written. So I'm saying it works better. I think it works better how you're saying, Jamie. I'm just saying.
Yeah. What's
the
funny
intention was to have it.
It reminds me, and this is a controversial take sometimes with certain people, but my favorite Mission Impossible movie was 3. I like 3 the best. Okay. But there's a scene in Mission Impossible 3 that I loved that I know a lot of people were kind of mad about almost, but I thought it was great, where they have this big heist and everything, and Tom Cruise goes into the building and they're getting ready and you're expecting this big scene. And then all of a sudden he goes, change the plan. I'm coming out the window, or whatever he says. And the window breaks and he just flies out the window with a parachute. You never see the heist or what went wrong. You just see Tom Cruise flying out the window. And I love that scene. I thought, to me, that was
great.
like one of my favorite things, like favorite little tricks of that movie.
That's
was
that
like,
one. You get that one. You get the one. That's the audience contract. You
Yeah.
get the one. You get one.
It's
pass.
like one of my favorite scenes in Superman 2, right, where Non hits Superman and they go into the manhole cover, then it's just hear a bunch of sounds
Bing,
until he
bing,
gets,
bing, bing, bing.
and then he flies out and Superman gets up and shakes his hand off like he just punched him.
right.
It's not like the audience isn't treated to what happened.
Yeah.
And it's great.
Jamie, this is a great one because, like, yeah, it's, if you compare it to a Hollywood one, I think, like, if the movie kept doing that over and over, it wouldn't work. But the fact that it, like, chooses that is really cool. Like, to just do it, like, sporadic. It's good.
Right. It's funny. I've heard people talk about Mission Impossible 3 in this regard and be like,
never heard anyone say that.
Yeah, and be like, I know they must have shot that scene. And I'm like, but it must have been really bad or something, and they cut it out. And I'm like, no, that's not what it was.
No, I just watched it because of the new one, 3. I just watched 3, and I love that because it's funny.
Yeah.
It's a good for just like we're talking about here. I think the reason this works better is because of the joke of Dante being like, her casket fell over. Like,
exactly.
Like that. It's the comedy of it is way funnier than actually seeing it.
It's a surprise. It's a surprise.
Yeah.
We could see a whole nother sequence like they show, and it could be great or it could be okay. But instead, they give us a shock. But, for one time, they surprise us. They're like, we're not going to show it to you. There's a problem.
I feel like there's a little. This isn't really the same, but what happened with that guy in the bathroom? Yeah, not that you want to see it. I don't want to see that.
But there is a version where that's the joke, right? You show kind of the dead guy, and it's dark.
Yeah,
you hear noises or something.
Yeah.
You show him like him actually dying.
The Weekend at Bernie's
pleasuring himself
on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's less funny than just letting us run with it in our minds. Also, way less vulgar.
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah. Now that we say it, that scene could be pretty funny.
That guy's performance is so funny that maybe yes, because that guy's performance
very
is
weird sort of way.
Yeah. Also, I feel like this might not be off screen, but like there's a sense of what's always happening on the other side of the building. Yeah. I always feel whenever I watch this movie, I'm always like, what is Randall doing right now? What is Dante doing right now? When they show that, you know what I mean? The opposite, because we're dealing with 2 stores.
Yeah.
And there's just like the idea that like the other part of the story is happening, but I'm not going to be able to see that part until it catches up with me.
It's a great off-screen movie.
Does that count as off-screen movie? I don't know.
Yes, it does.
It's sort of like a simultaneous
off-screen. You're speaking to it, yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
This just gives that air of it. Okay, running gags.
Yeah, this is one I don't really have much to say except for I wanted to point them out because I think it's a really instructive example of it, and it's once again using big Hollywood cheeseburger techniques. So, running gags, it's another type of repetition. In this case, it's a joke pattern. It's not just a pattern, it's a joke pattern. And oftentimes the running gags, they don't actually start as a joke. It's just they become a joke because we become familiar with the exclamation or whatever is being repeated. And then it just gets funnier and funnier as they try to make them fresh, do fresh and different unexpected things with it. So like the one, of course, is I'm not even supposed to be here today. That's right. The running Dante's catchphrase. And every time he's more and more desperate and more upset. And it's more funny because it just keeps piling on. Other running gags in it are, oh, what next? That keeps happening over and over. And then every single time he says that, we expect something shitty to happen. And then Randall, bunch of savages in this town. That's a running gag. And then various characters. My favorite one, something smells like shoe polish. So this movie has 4 running gags. I mean,
also Asian design major.
Oh, Asian design major. Yeah, that's a 5th. Yeah. There's probably some I'm meeting. So this is definitely intentional. It's definitely something that, like Jamie said early on, this is so stuffed with gags. And this
37.
the 37. Yeah, there you go. This is just stuffed with techniques, and this is one of them. So just want to point it out. If you want to know how to use it, this is a great example to learn from.
I also feel like there's some running gag with cigarettes with the
Yes,
he gets
the
there.
repetition
He's
with
called a death merchant and pelted with cigarettes. Then he gets, then Randall sells cigarettes to a child.
Yeah.
Then he gets fined $500 for something he didn't do because of
all
cigarettes.
the trials and tribulations of
cigarettes.
His cigarettes.
Yeah.
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 There's a cigarette whiteboard, is what you're saying.
Yeah. 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 There's a cigarette whiteboard. I think that was a good thing to bring us to comic obsessions, right?
Yes, this is one of my pull strings. If I had an action figure, so this is something we've talked about many times on the show, and it's not just in comedies. We've found it in horror movies. We've found it in serious dramas. The Holdovers, every one of the main characters had a comic obsession. And I guess you could call that a dramedy though. But anyway, this came from a Robert McKee comedy seminar that I went to. And to put simply, comic obsession is when a character has a fixation or a behavior that to them is normal, but to everyone else, especially the audience, is extreme. And that's why it's often called, we used to call it a blind comic obsession, but that confuses people. Because like then they go, oh, but wait, they know they're doing it, and it's like they're blind to the extremeness of it, is what it is. So some of the examples on the show we've used in the past are Meg Ryan, Sally's complicated restaurant orders, and when Harry Met Sally, that's the comedy engine for her character. Randy's encyclopedic knowledge of horror in Scream, that is the comedic engine for his character. Ian Malcolm's chaos theory in Jurassic Park. Every time Ian Malcolm is funny, it's because he's talking about chaos theory. And most recently, we just did Ham Porter's excessive trash talking to showboating in The Sandlot. And when I was watching this, I was like so pleased to see that Kevin Smith was using it as a comedy technique. I mean, I'm probably gonna miss some, Bob.
Sure,
but
I mean, hear what you got, and then I can think of more.
All the customers that are funny because of the comedic obsessions. The anti-smoking activists' obsessive crusade against cigarettes,
or his crusade to sell gum. Right.
Twist. Yeah. That's tensity too. So see, he's using all the techniques. The egg perfectionist's compulsive need to find the perfect dozen eggs. That's the quintessential comic obsession. The prudish customer's extreme offense at the profanity, and then they show him the porno mag, and he's like, ah! Right. So that's definitely
the milkmaid, right?
The milkmaid, the obsessive date checking. Yes. The bathroom connoisseur. He's obsessed with having the perfect bathroom experience at the quick stop.
The guy obsessed with Weekly World News.
The tabloid guy. Yeah, that's right.
The tabloids. Yeah, right.
The tabloid guy customer. Rick the trainer. He's fixation on physical fitness and specifically body shaming Dante. I mean, that's so. We just named like 8.
Jay's horniness.
Jay's definitely horny. That's
Jay's
good one.
Like I would even just say his general profanity. And his
that's what makes him funny. Absolutely.
Yeah. His homophobia and all that stuff is mixed in there too. Like
it is. It's more like we could probably generalize his personality and just say something about
his offensive personality.
His offensive personality on
personality.
Purpose.
Yeah.
Right. But I didn't even do the main characters. I just thought it was crazy how like every single time a customer came to the register, I was like, oh shit, they got a comedic obsession. This is awesome. So anyway, this is another thing. If you want to learn how to use this tool, Clerks is a very Disney level example of how to use it.
You can even argue the guy who's mad at Randall for not being there at open because he wants to return his thing. That guy even has this air of he hates kids. Right. He hates the youth. He just like hates all these punks. That's his kind of thing, Yeah. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I would think Dante and Randall have a few of them too.
Yeah, I
but
didn't even track them.
Yeah, it would just be the stuff you already know. Like Randall likes messing with customers.
Mm-hmm.
He hates customers. That's his obsession, his hatred of customers. The out of place technique. Who's this?
Yes, this is mine.
This is yours. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so bear with me because we've only ever talked about this once in 138 episodes. So
okay.
I'm not used to talking about it. I'm not used to teaching it. So I might stumble through this one. But
Okay.
this was another one that stuck out to me that I think is instructive and people who are listening can learn how to do themselves. So this originally came from Steve Kaplan's book, The Hidden Tools of Comedy, which we've talked about on a couple episodes. And we used this tool once, and that was on the Wayne's World episode. So if you want to hear more about this, we broke down 4 or 5 scenes in Wayne's World that do this too. So I've kind of recodified this the way that we've recodified Stephen King's types of horror, because Stephen King's types of horror are a little hard to understand and replicate because they're a little complicated. And I feel like Steve Kaplan's out of place technique, it's got like 10 different versions of it. So it's heady and hard to teach. So I've simplified it and I call it the funny formula. It's just one type of tool to create funny stuff in your script. So you know how I do ordinary plus premise specific thing equals, extraordinary, unique to your story. Well, I take that same idea and you say ordinary plus out of place or inappropriate element equals extraordinarily funny. So I'll show you how Kevin Smith has used that. So this is what makes most memes funny. This is fine dog. You got an ordinary domestic setting, a dog in a room, plus an out of place scenario. The room is on fire. And an out of place inappropriate response. This is fine. And it becomes funny.
Right. Okay.
And the woman yelling at a confused cat at the dinner table. You've got a woman crying and screaming with her friends holding her back at an ordinary dinner table. But across from her is a confused cat, which is the out of place element. And that makes it funny. Okay. So, and if anybody out there likes this, Amy Sherman Palladino and Daniel Palladino use this for almost every one of their jokes is based around this. If you watch Gilmore Girls, every Gilmore Girls episode has this technique, and it is all over the place in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, to the point that once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it, and you'll be like, oh, this is an out of place. Oh, it's 2 friends at a table. Now one is the mom and the other is the daughter in the scenario, and that's why it's funny. Here's some of the Clerks examples. So the ordinary for all of this is the convenience store. Couldn't get more ordinary, right? So ordinary convenience store plus out of place inappropriate ingredient equals comedy. So we have out of place characters. The little girl buying the cigarettes. That's the out of place inappropriate equals funny. The $500 health inspector fine. That's definitely not something that belongs in the convenience store setting, ordinary. That makes it funny. Playing hockey on the quick stop roof. That's the out of place, inappropriate scenario. That's why it's funny. Arguing about sex partners behind the register in front of customers. That's the out of place, inappropriate that makes it funny. Randall randomly spitting water at a customer's face to prove a point. That's the out of place, inappropriate that makes it funny. Dead guy with a boner found in a bathroom. That's the out of place, inappropriate that makes this funny.
You can even argue that guy asking for a porno mag
is inappropriate.
Out of place. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that part too. Some other things. The cat using a litter box on the front counter while the customer watches. That's the out of place, inappropriate ingredient that makes it funny. Dante turning a tortilla chip and salsa into the scene from Jaws. That's the out of place, inappropriate. So it's just, and then it even works in dialogue. So they're having a very serious conversation with that one woman, and she ends the conversation with an out of place finale, which is, and that's why I masturbate caged animals for artificial insemination.
Right.
So that's the out of place, inappropriate ending to that conversation, which makes it funny. And then when Dante is looking for the hockey ball, another hockey ball, when they lose the hockey ball, he says down to Jay, "Any balls down there?" And the out of place
pair you ever seen.
Yeah, the out of place, inappropriate response that makes it funny is, "The biggest pair you ever seen, Dingleberry." So Kevin Smith is using this in nearly every single scene of the movie. And it really stuck out to me. It's super instructive and it's super easy to do. And I personally have, ever since I learned this and I kind of simplified it to the funny formula, ordinary plus out of place, inappropriate equals funny. That has made it so much easier to write funny stuff, because I'm not a naturally funny guy. I'm not a stand-up comic, but I still feel like you can use these tools and techniques and you can find something organically funny doing that. So, and I think that's, yeah.
Have you ever heard what's his name? The guy who directed the Step Brothers. Why am I forgetting his name? His theory on making comedy movies that kind of plays into this, Jimmy, is you write a normal movie and then you fuck up 20% of it.
That's great, with inappropriate, out of place shit.
Yeah, I can't remember when or where he said
it's
it.
Almost like the ordinary is invaded by the ridiculous,
the comedy or the extraordinary or the ridiculous. Yeah, I just remember him saying that. I think it was something to do with the other guys when that came out. He was Adam McKay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I remember him saying, "Fuck up 20% of it. Make a normal action movie for the other guys, and then fuck up 20% of it,
and then it becomes
everything else is legit." And that's why it remains funny. So
that's great. I love that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I don't know what Clerks would. I guess the idea is that Clerks would be some sort of a drama.
Yeah, it's a drama, and then you add in that a little girl is buying cigarettes, and a guy wants to take a dump and have it be a great experience, and then he dies, and in the back,
right.
Yeah.
And Dante is not himself like funny at all. Yeah,
he's not funny.
What happens to Dante?
Yeah.
I mean, that idea is kind of, not that this really speaks to the out of place technique so much, but it almost reminds me of Judd Apatow's, how he insisted on Bridesmaids and Superbad that the writers write the non-funny version first.
And
make sure and that was more about just making the plot work in some ways, or the drama work. And then he kind of said, "You're funny, you're going to write funny, but will you write the good drama? Will you write the good emotional movie?" Yeah.
That's where I think him and Adam McKay wouldn't see eye to eye, because I don't necessarily think the drama works in those Adam McKay comedies. Like, I don't think Step Brothers has an emotional core that works, but it doesn't matter.
It's not trying to. I got
It's not trying to at all. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Sometimes in comedy, it's like certain writers almost can't take that dramatic side seriously. They almost want to make fun of it. Like, almost like their opinion is movies don't make you cry. Come on. So let's make fun of that.
I think Kevin Smith does, though. I mean,
so Kevin Smith and honestly, the Farrelly brothers kind of a little bit after him, they kind of had similar, very sentimental sides where they felt like, I think their best writing could touch your heart and make you cry or something at the end of it, and I'm not sure that's on full display in Clerks. But I think it's trying in some ways.
I mean,
very serious. The tap into something real.
I'd argue that was one of Harold Ramis's best qualities. When he was trying to do it, he wasn't always trying to have that there, but when he was trying, like Groundhog Day, and we've done Groundhog Day, Bedazzled, and all the, he could do it really well.
Yeah, but Jamie, I agree that he was kind of dipping his toes into that, especially with that moment where Kevin Smith actually talks to Dante, right? Like, gives him
right. I think he's trying to lay out certain philosophies, certain almost advice to the audience or something like that, or advice to himself. And those parts are actually relatively serious. They're not, at least in comedy.
Yeah. the one simple explanation of theme that we've never talked about, because it's not really a tool that I've heard, is you approach it from a writing standpoint is, I think I know something about the world that the audience doesn't know, and I want to share it with them. And
Or
that's
the audience
like,
needs to hear. Maybe not
yeah,
doesn't know, but sometimes you just need to hear
needs to
something
hear.
said
Yeah.
out loud.
And that like speaks to what he's doing in those moments of Clerks that you're talking about, Jamie, for sure. You
Yeah.
feel that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Also, you could
Hey,
argue
listen.
almost every movie that Kevin Smith has made, definitely Clerks, it's his own experience he's mostly commenting on.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? There's some aspect of every movie he's made that is so personal, whereas a lot of directors, it's all, you know, they're kind of like jobbers
For
and stuff.
hire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah,
they're an
yeah. Kevin Smith
auteur.
is,
Yeah. Maybe that
and the
comes
one
with
time,
the auteur aspect of it.
the one time Kevin Smith did that was he was a jobber. Was what? Cop Out.
I was gonna let you
So,
say it.
yeah, like, so like the rest of his stuff, though, even the stuff that people hate, is there is always an aspect of that of a movie that's personal to him. Even
it's
Tusk is something he
yeah.
came up with on a podcast with his friends laughing. That's why that movie's personal to him.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
then even Dogma is really just
It's just Catholicism, right?
it's Catholicism as he was kind of dabbling with it in that phase of his life, you know.
And Red State is him probably dabbling with the more conservative, you know, aspect of that. You know,
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there that's personal to him. I think that's everything, guys. I think
Yeah.
that's the end of our topics. Did you have anything left you wanted to say about Clerks?
I want to reiterate, write what you have. If you're out there and you're, you know, we're in a state where we're in a state, but always the best way to make sure your words come to life is if you can figure out how to do it yourself. And yeah, that's easier said than done. And some people, they don't want to be directors and producers. I certainly never wanted to be a producer.
Sure.
But I have 7 movies because I had to figure out how to make them happen. And yeah, so consider it. Write what you have.
Write what you have and make your own Clerks.
Yeah, what does your
And
Clerks look like?
Make your own Clerks and put it on YouTube. You could probably do it for like $500.
Yeah.
Right. You just gotta feed people, really. You know, buy a few Little Caesars pizza.
That's the one thing you always have to do.
Is feeding people. Yeah.
Yep.
Jamie, anything?
The one thing we didn't really talk about, but I really noticed from this is, you know, this is Kevin Smith's voice, and I think the reason it becomes his voice, and that's really what kind of launched his career up until he became even more than a movie guy, is because he didn't pull any punches when it came to it. Like this would be a movie where you could have a lot of doubt, like especially back in the 90s with some of these jokes and some of the places he went and how things are kind of vulgar. And then he mixes like movie references and, you know, but he just kind of went for it. He kind of did what he thought was funny and what he wanted to see. And I think that's the best thing you can do, both as a filmmaker, like if you are a first-time filmmaker or something, or a low-budget filmmaker, but also a spec screenwriter. I think they're kind of one and the same, where you really have to go for it. You have to really stand out. And instead of just kind of playing the hits, so to speak, you have to do something that's going to stand out.
I having listened to the commentary on this subject, he says in the very beginning, now everybody's drunk on that commentary and they're shooting mall rats like during the commentary. But he says something to the effect of, during the festival run of Clerks, he was cringing whenever the scene of Dante and Veronica talking about sex was on, because it made him feel like he was way lower brow than what the festivals normally had. And like it made him actually feel embarrassed and stuff, and like he almost wanted to take it all out. And then eventually, you know, he realized the reason that the movie has fans is because of things like that, and obviously he didn't change.
That's how I usually teach it. I mean, and this isn't anything I invented. This is old kind of advice. But if you feel a little embarrassed, you're probably doing something right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're like, I'm not sure if I should put this out there. What's this person going to think when they see this? That's a good sign. Like to the point where I think some people should try to find that place, depending on the movie. If you're rating a Pixar movie, maybe not. I don't know. but I think if
you're not like worried about it, you're not doing something that's interesting, probably.
Yeah. If you're not like, what's this person going to think when they read my script of me? Then you probably aren't quite to the place of like 100% authentic revelation in some ways that you need to be. Yeah.
When your movie screens, you should have some tingling in your stomach that feels bad.
We
like that first time.
Yes. We said it on the last episode, guys. I think it was the last episode. All three of us did. Every single time I watch a movie where we didn't take the big swing, I go, oh God, we should have done it. We should have taken that. It would have been so much better if we just took the big swing. Who cares how people really responded?
I used to always say, and I probably said in this podcast before, I remember when I was in college and I was making films on 16 millimeter black and white, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'd sit around and we'd kind of make, and I was the guy that would always make jokes. Wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And it was always like kind of being sarcastic or flippant, trying to get a laugh. And I'd come up with crazy things to do. And at some point it clicked to me. I was like, oh, those are the things I should be doing. Mm-hmm. Like they're not the jokes that I'm throwing out there to like, wouldn't it be funny if, no, it would be funny. Yeah. It would probably be, and so those kind of things are the things you should be doing. Now, Kevin Smith is doing those more in a dialogue level or
yeah.
He's not.
I was going to say, I always ended up going with the visual, like just like, I bet if I shot this, people would hate looking at it.
Well, go watch Timecrave, listeners.
I'm not recommending any of it. I'm just saying that's kind of where I was always at. I was like, I don't think I wouldn't want people to see this, so I should definitely.
Black jeans, whoa, hell yeah.
Right, well, just stuff like that. Like, this seems...
Guys, I'm a Bob Rose fanboy over here.
That's amazing, because they're not script movies. But you know what I mean? Like, you film things that you were told not to. You're not supposed to do this, and then...
A good example of that from this movie is the guy under the sheet. Right. And he has the boner.
Right.
Like,
and the boner,
right. That'd be the type of joke I would have made to my friends. You know what would be funny? What if he had this boner? And then everybody would laugh and we'd just shoot the scene.
It's like this massive boner in the ambulance.
Right.
With her, it's really inappropriate of a shot if you think about it.
Yeah. But those are the kind of like weird gags that sometimes you have to like just go for it and do. Like, and sometimes they'll be embarrassing that you went for it. Sometimes they'll be distracting.
And also,
I feel like
they're
the best things.
The three of us, in our different ways, come from either horror or comedy or both. I bet there's filmmakers that don't have interest in those genres that would tell you different things.
Yes.
There's obviously filmmakers that don't have interest in that kind of joke or humor or shock or I'm going to show you something you've never seen or something like that. You know what I mean? Like there's some filmmakers that really just want to film people talking in different rooms.
Be genre
right.
Genre specific.
Those people have different things they need to go for. Like, it's like, should I have him cheat on her right now? Or something, they're almost like plot decisions. And it's like, that would really throw things into, but that'd be crazy. That'd be wild. I'll keep it safe. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. They have different, it doesn't always have to be about a gag or a gore shot or anything like that. It's just, there are these ideas you get, and sometimes they're off the beaten path, and they're the ones sometimes you really have to examine whether you should lean into them or not, because sometimes they make things interesting.
And I think that if you were a fan of Kevin Smith in the last 20 years and listened to his podcasts and his general, like, his stories and stuff, his movies are really just ideas he mined from himself, and he always makes a note of them. He's like, oh wait, that's a really good and crazy or funny idea. He writes them down after he tells them to a crowd or on a podcast, and then they end up in the movie. Like, I'm not reviewing Clerks 3 right now, but Clerks 3, I watched Clerks 3 before he made Clerks 3 because everything in that movie he said into a microphone at some point. Does that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he noted it. I was like, that's a really good idea. I'll put that.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, that movie, isn't it even about like his heart attack and stuff like that and all kinds?
Yeah, no, it's all that. And if you've heard all of his stories about that incident, it's literally just in the movie, almost word for word.
Right.
But for better or worse, depending on how you feel about that movie. But you know what I mean? It's just like,
because
he's mining his ideas from his self that he finds outrageous or funny.
Is Clerks 3 the one also where he decides to make a movie about the convenience?
Yes.
Yeah. So all
Clerks
that
3 is about him making Clerks,
Right.
about Randall making Clerks.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm just saying he's doing that from his own life over a long period of time. He's just making note of all his outrageous or funny ideas.
Right.
And then putting them in a script, you know. But anyway, did you guys have anything you wanted to plug?
I'll take the baton on the review spiel. If you like the show, the easiest way to support it is through a share, but also it's like harder than ever to get eyes. The organic reach on all of the platforms is horrendous.
I think it's worse than it's ever been. I mean, truly.
I've even, because I used to be like a social media like expert kind of, and for my job, and I've even studied posts that are like the same content at the same time on the same platform, and I have like a larger audience than I've ever had, and it gets like 90% less reach than it got 7 years ago. So
right.
And so yeah, it's just tough out there to get new eyes on it and new ears on it.
The three of us, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I don't think any of us yearn to be influencers.
No, not at all.
So we're not trying to game the algorithm either.
No, but it's nice to get new listeners because
it is. Yes.
You know, typically that gives us more energy, and it's fun for the show to grow. So yeah, or you can, specifically if you're an Apple user, if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, that reboots the discoverability. It puts us to the top of the search every single time someone leaves a review. It bumps us up and we become one of the higher results in when people search for screenwriting. And if we don't, we kind of stay buried onto like number 18 or 19 before someone even sees that we exist. So they are,
or just
give us help.
Star ratings on Spotify. I'm sure there's other platforms that we don't know about that have reviews. I don't know what people do.
And we've also said it before. If you're like, oh God, this sucks, it actually would help us.
If you want to write an essay about why this podcast sucks.
Yeah, stop talking about your personal experience.
Those people probably didn't make it 2 hours into the Clerks here then. Unless they might be like, really hate us so much that they like to listen and yell at the podcast.
Remember Private Parts with Howard Stern with
right.
people that hate him listen to him for 2 hours a day or something.
No, but it's cool. We have a really dedicated, nice following. It's just, it's tougher
and we're thankful for it.
And it's just tougher than ever to get new ears.
Those people are dying out or getting older.
I was gonna say this literal episode makes us sound so old.
We're fucking old, dude.
Yeah, we're old, man. I don't want to live on social media anymore. I just don't. So like, any help's appreciated.
Oh yeah, and if you have any questions, hit us up at writersblockbusterspodcast@gmail.com. I've been dropping the ball. I'm in charge of questions. I've been dropping the ball and bringing them as part of the show's experience.
You're doing great. Stop it.
Yeah, writersblockbusterspodcast@gmail.com.
Right. And go see Jamie's Christmas movie.
Oh yeah, Jamie, can you
I'll wait till Christmas.
You wait to plug that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you know what? That could mean other movies. You have several.
It could.
Christmas movies.
Yeah.
So.
Out for pre-order. I've talked about it a lot in the show. It's finally out on pre-order. Save the Cat Writes Horror. So go check that out.
Yes.
Awesome.
It's out there, and it even has like is it a black cat on the front now?
It does.
Oh, I love that.
Black cat and a little haunted house behind
That's
it.
great.
Yeah.
I think that's everything, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, this is Bob Rose, and thank you for listening to Writers Blockbusters. If you'd like to financially support the show, please consider joining my Patreon. I've been producing the podcast for several years completely out of pocket, and I'd like to keep producing it ad-free and no longer at a loss. If you'd like to help, head on over to patreon.com/Bob Rose Sucks. That's right, Bob Rose Sucks. And if you want the one and only Jimmy George to help polish up that writing project you're kind of struggling with, head on over to scriptbutcher.com. As a listener, you already know he's the best there is, scriptbutcher.com. You can also support the show by simply sharing it or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate both. Thank you for listening, and see you next episode.